everyone, 6-Speed Dakota here, and today, warning lights. What do they mean? What do you do when they come on? So on and so forth. So, there's about a zillion different warning lights on the vehicle. Now, we're not going to go over the obvious ones, like the seatbelt warning light. I think that's pretty obvious, and the door open warning light and stuff like that. That seems pretty self-explanatory to me. So, obviously, if those are on, you know what to do. Now, there's certain other lights that mean different things. Now, when it comes to lights on the dash, there's a lot of different style of vehicles. Now, a lot of bigger vehicles, older vehicles, bigger trucks, stuff like that have tons of gauges. You have oil pressure gauges, temperature gauges, so on and so forth. Now, a lot of vehicles nowadays just have speedometer, possibly a RPM gauge or a tachometer, and a fuel gauge, and maybe a temperature gauge. And everything else is just dealt with in warning lights. Now, a lot of older vehicles have more gauges to tell you what's going on. So, and now I've seen a light that says check gauges. Now, if you have an issue like your oil pressure is at 0, which is a very serious problem, or your vehicle's starting to overheat, the check gauges light will come on. But that's usually for older vehicles. So I'm more catering towards your minivans, compacts, crossovers like my Hyundai Santa Fe. It's sitting just off camera here. So we're going to go over, there's basically 3 or 4 major ones. We're talking about the brake warning light. We're going to talk about the ABS system light. We're going to talk about the airbag warning light. We're going to talk about the check engine light. And we're also going to talk about the oil pressure light, and if there's a temperature light. So I guess that makes 6. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you usually see when you get into the vehicle is obviously the door warning light. Now, a lot of vehicles nowadays have a low fuel warning light. I figured that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so the first thing you usually see when you get into the vehicle is obviously the door warning light. Now, a lot of vehicles nowadays have a low fuel warning light. I figured that's pretty self-explanatory. So this light here has a little key in it, and that's usually the vehicle's security light, which means that the security system has detected a proximity key or something like that. Because a lot of vehicles nowadays actually have a key, a chip inside the key here, if you can see my hand. And that prevents anybody from driving away without the proper key. Okay, so the first thing we do when we get in the vehicle and we turn the key on, now I have the park lights on just to illuminate things. We see we have a multitude of different lights. Now, some vehicles actually have a fog light that comes on, but basically, as you can see how the signal's green, anything with green usually means it's a function indicator light, such as the fog lights or something like that. Your high beam indicator is blue. So, and I hate it when people drive around with their bloody high beams on, so make sure your high beams aren't on. Okay, so now you notice we have 3 lights on this side and the check engine light. So the check engine light is an amber colored light, and an amber colored light, also if we cycle the key one more time, you notice we have the ABS light up there and a couple other amber lights. Now, amber lights mean they're warning. It's not going to cause your vehicle any immediate danger. So the check engine light will usually come on saying that there's an issue with the engine or the engine management system. Now, if this light is on, that usually means there's a fault with the system. Now, if the vehicle runs and drives somewhat normally, then you're probably okay. You're in good shape. Now, if the check engine light is flashing on and off, that usually means you have a misfire, and that could damage the engine or the emission systems. So you're going to want to stop and shut the vehicle off if that check engine light is flashing. The check engine light just lets you know that there is a fault somewhere. If the check engine light is flashing, you're probably going to want to shut it off before you damage your catalytic converters or some kind of emission system. But other than that, it's just saying that there's a malfunction that you need to know about but you can still drive the vehicle. The ABS warning light is basically like the check engine for the ABS. It's saying that the anti-lock braking system, so when you hammer on the brake pedal real hard, and you can feel that little tut-tut-tut-tut-tut on your foot when there's something the matter with it, or when you're sliding a little bit, basically what the ABS light is saying is, okay, there's an issue with the ABS system and the ABS will no longer function. The ABS stands for anti-lock braking systems. When the ABS light is on, the ABS no longer functions, but your brakes function normally. So be aware of that. Okay, so let's move on to the brake light. Right there. Now the reason that this is on is because I have the parking brake on. But if that light is on when the parking brake is off, that could mean a multitude of things. So if that light is on, number one thing is make sure your brake pedal still has good feeling. If your brake pedal's spongy and it sinks straight to the floor, well then you know that you have an issue. And you need to pull over and stop because there's probably a hydraulic leak or something in that sense. So you need to be very aware of that. Now if everything feels normal, then I'd go under the hood and I'd make sure that the brake fluid level is good. Because if the brake fluid level is low, the sensor could trip that light to come on. Now we'll talk about that in a future video about fluids. Now this little light here is the charge indicator light. Now when this comes on, it means that the vehicle's alternator is no longer charging the battery. Either there's something wrong, something became disconnected or something, because this means that the battery is not being charged. It doesn't mean that the battery is necessarily low yet, but what that will mean is that your vehicle's battery will eventually go dead and you have to do something about it. Now this one right here is probably the most important one, which is the little oil lamp here. Now what that light means is that the vehicle has little or no oil pressure. And oil pressure is very important. Oil is the lifeblood of your engine. So if that light is on, that means your engine has no blood pumping through it, and you will quickly hurt it. Now if that light is flashing or flickering, there's a good chance your oil level is so low that it's actually starting to suck air. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to go under the hood, check the oil, and possibly add oil. So that's very, very important. Do not, if that light comes on, you have to shut the engine off immediately. Now if your battery light comes on, you could probably still drive it for a little bit, but be aware that once the battery goes dead, you're going to be stuck on the side of the road because the alternator is not functioning no longer. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad alternator, but that is a charging system fault. But because our engine is not running at the moment, that's why that light is on. But this is not what is meant by check engine. Well, yeah, the engine's still there. I've just checked the engine. No, that's not exactly what it means. But if your battery light comes on, if your check engine light comes on, there's probably not much you can do at the moment. There really is. You can see there's a big plastic cover on here. If you don't have any tools, you're not going to get anywhere. Now, if your battery indicator light comes on, the first thing you can do is you can look to see down here on the left-hand side of the engine here where the drive belt is on this particular vehicle, if the drive belt's still intact. If you notice that the steering's really hard to turn, then you've probably lost the fan belt somewhere. Anyway, so that's one thing if the charge light comes on to check. Another thing is, check to make sure your battery terminals are okay, something hasn't popped off, something is not, these shouldn't have any green fuzz growing on them. And of course, so if your brake warning light is on, one thing you're going to want to do is this little reservoir here next to the driver's side against the back of the engine bay, or what's called the firewall, you're going to want to check if this reservoir has an adequate amount of fluid in it, because if not, the vehicle will automatically sound the brake light saying that there's an issue. Now, one last thing is the engine oil. If that oil light is on, the first thing you want to do is you want to pull your dipstick out and make sure you got plenty of engine oil in there. And if you don't, that's probably the cause of your oil light. If you do, it could be anything from a bad sensor to maybe you lost the oil filter or something. In that case, you don't really know, but I wouldn't chance it because that would be rather expensive repair if you ran your engine out of oil. Now you should have a basic understanding of what all the lights in your vehicle mean. So check engine light is a warning light saying that there's a fault with the engine control or management system. The little oil lamp means that you have no oil pressure, which means that It's like your body. If you have no blood coursing through you, you're going to die pretty quickly. Well, your engine will die pretty quickly without any oil. Brake warning light, if your park and brake is off, then you need to check your brake fluid level, because there's a good chance that your brake fluid is probably just low. Now, if your brake pedal is really soft, that'll probably be the cause of your brake warning light, and you do not want to keep driving if your brake pedal is soft, because that can cause a serious accident. Your ABS light is on. That's usually just a fault in the system, either a sensor's bad or something along those lines that needs to be looked at. The anti-lock brakes will not function, but your braking system will function normally. Now, the reason why the ABS will not function is because if there's a problem, you don't want it to function by accident, which could cause the vehicle's brakes to lock up or something like that and cause an accident. I hope you found this video informative. Now remember, you can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/6speeddakota, Twitter at 6speeddakota, Google+ +6speeddakota.